Here we are inside the visitor center at the Quadrangle at Fort Sam Houston. And what you're looking at here is a picture of Geronimo, famous Apache war chief, medicine man, who pillaged and raided all across the Southwest, mostly in Arizona, New Mexico, and in Mexico. His wife and children were killed by the Mexicans in Mexico, and since that time he had always hated the Mexicans. It says, on the 4th of September 1886, after a grueling campaign across the Southwest, Geronimo surrendered to General Nelson Miles in Arizona and was ordered sent to Florida as a prisoner of war. He and 32 other Apaches departed by train on the 8th. Citizens of Arizona demanded that Geronimo be returned to stand trial for murder and other crimes after his escape from the reservation. But President Cleveland initially wanted to turn Geronimo over to the civil authorities, but General Miles insisted the Apaches be treated as prisoners of war. And so President Cleveland ordered the train stopped at the nearest military post until he could settle the issue. The train stopped in San Antonio on 10 September. The Apaches were brought to the Quadrangle. They were kept there because the guardhouse on what is now called the infantry post was not completed. On the 19th of October, 1886, the Secretary of War announced that the government would honor the terms of surrender to Miles and that Geronimo and the male Apaches would be sent to Fort Pickens, Florida, the women and children to be sent to Fort Marion. They left San Antonio on October 22nd. After 2 years at Fort Pickens, Geronimo and his group were transferred to Mount Vernon Barracks in Alabama. And in 1884, they were transferred to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Geronimo died there in 1909. Now, local legend says or asserts that Geronimo jumped from the tower. The observation platform is 60 feet from the ground. If Geronimo jumped from that height, he would be going 62 feet per second or 42 miles an hour upon impact with the ground, striking with a force of about 9,610 foot-pounds. Could he have survived a jump from that height? So we can say that's just a fanciful tale. And here they actually have a replica of what Geronimo typically wore while he was here. Down to the boots. And as you can see up here, it resembles very closely the outfit indeed that he had. Very close to that, hat and all. Now as we pan around the Quadrangle, we'll see quite a number of plaques and pictures. Sack coat of an infantry sergeant in the 19th century. Looks like it was made out of wool. It would have been pretty warm down here in San Antonio. Might have passed out of heat exhaustion if you wore it down here. And here's a picture, a black and white picture. Of the depot making room for the headquarters. Some other old pictures. Apparently dealing with the construction of the site. We hope you enjoy these series of videos concerning Fort Sam Houston and the Quadrangle. If you do, then please subscribe to my channel. And if you like what you see here, then please hit the like icon. We'd greatly appreciate that. Now here we have what they call a shell jacket. This was the type of jacket worn by the U.S. Army during the Mexican War, which was, of course, fought around 1847, 1848. Here we see some inscriptions, no doubt, from people who spent some time within the quadrangle, and so they write various inscriptions or names. It's this fellow right here. We see the view of the tower and the courtyard about 1880. So what we saw in the previous videos starts right here. There you have the quadrangle itself being built, and what this place looked like. Instead of a nice park-like setting, we see the courtyard and the workshops and the stable area, which would be right there. There's the quadrangle. That's in December 1876. You see here a group of officers, enlisted men who are stationed here. Here we see what is called, or termed, the backbone of the Army. Non-commissioned officers' corps is the framework in which the Army is built. Originally consisting of just sergeants and corporals, the basic function of the NCO remains the same then as now. The officer issues an order, the NCO makes sure it happens. Left to right is a non-commissioned officer sword with scabbard and sling, haversack, the 1880s version of the russet, and the black campaign hat worn universally in the field to protect against the weather. So here you have an actual sword that would have been issued to one of the non-coms, and its sheath. And the haversack. And here's a black campaign hat of the period. This poster tells us the connection between San Antonio and Fort Sam Houston. It's been called a military city. That's what it would have looked like way back when. Over here we see the dragoons. The first U.S. Army soldiers to arrive in San Antonio were the members of the 2nd Regiment of Dragoons, a type of heavy armed cavalry. Dragoons carried the saber. It was so heavy it was nicknamed the wrist breaker. When required to carry the saber while not on horseback, the dragoons used white, buff leathered belts and slings. The rectangular eagle belt buckle initially was for all soldiers, but was later worn only by officers. Here you have a picture of the sword. Looks pretty heavy, all right. And there's the pointed end, the belt and buckle. And here you see an old drawing of where we're presently located, Fort Sam Houston. Here we see the quadrangle from inside the visitor center. As you can see, it's still there. A lot of history. It contains a lot of history. And various insignias. Units of the quadrangle have been responsible for providing soldiers with their equipment, uniforms, and weapons. Here we see some and again, this is the visitor center stationed right beside the quadrangle. Give you a good view of the room again. We certainly hope you enjoyed this series of videos dealing with the history of the entire Southwest area.